Hey, welcome back to Dad Life Chess. It is time for round 6 of the DojoLiga Season 2 recap videos. If you're asking, hey, what happened to round 4 and 5? Let me give you the quick recap. They didn't happen. Round 4, my opponent and I could not find a time that worked in our schedule, so we both decided to take the draw. Round 5, last week, early on in the week, I messaged my opponent and we both could not find a time that was working in our schedule. My week was getting kind of busy, and the deadline is on Wednesday to choose a time. And long story short, we ended up taking another bye. And I'm glad I did, because come Wednesday, late Wednesday, early Thursday, I was not feeling well at all. Kind of came down with a sickness, wasn't feeling well, wouldn't have been up for a game anyway. Well, round 6 was this week, and our pairings come out each and every morning. Shout out to our fearless tournament director, Mitch Fabian, who always does a wonderful job of getting the pairings out. So it's kind of a tradition being on the Pacific Standard Time. Whenever I wake up, I'm able to look at the pairings for the day. I look to see who our team is playing, and then I want to see who we're paired against. And this week was a treat. I was paired up against National Master Evan Rosenberg. Now, Evan Rosenberg is an active member of the Chess Punks and Chess Dojo community. He is he helps out with the Chess Dojo frequently. I've seen him play, and so yeah, I was a little intimidated. Here we have a national master against me, the Potzer, the 1600, almost 1700 USCF Potzer. So Monday, got the pairings. We decided we'd play Tuesday evening, working out on our schedule. Monday, I was with my family. We were out of town. So I was sneaking some time on my cell phone trying to find what openings he plays. I had the white, so I knew I was going to play the London system. And I noticed that he plays a unique line. Now, let me show you the line that he plays. Well, there's actually two lines. And, when you're preparing against an opponent, you kind of assume what you think they're going to play. I did see that he does play d5 in some of his games, and whenever you get into the London, he'd play this. But a vast majority of his games started with knight f6, and then after the London, he plays the very tricky move order b6. Now, in a lot of my blitz games, pretty much almost on autopilot, I play stuff like this. You go here, but this gets into a weird line. So you get kind of stuff like this, and you get this position that is actually really good for black. This is not the kind of position I wanted to find myself in. This bishop is an absolute beast on the diagonal, and he gets a lot of games with this in the database, and he does very well, scores very well as black. So as fate would have it, a new London course came out on Monday from Chessable. It's a lifetime repertoire for the London system. And in my purpose, if you know me, if anything comes out as London system, I just have to buy it, because it's like I will add it to my collection. I am a longtime London system player. I love the London system. You can hate me in the comments, all right? But that's just the way it is. I love the London. I like to see all the kind of nuances. And there's a line that was recommended, and actually recommended in Indrik's course, the London attack as well, is when they play this early b6 against the London right here, instead of going into these e3 lines, allowing this knight h4, knight h5, you go knight c3. And the idea is, and we kind of talked about this in the post-game analysis. Yeah. Oh, by the way, the post-mortem for this game was remarkable. And I'll probably talk about it more as we go on. But basically what I realized, the difference between a 1700 player and a master is like a Grand Canyon of knowledge. Evan was spouting out lines and analysis, and I was like, whoa, how are you seeing all this? And basically I realized I just don't calculate enough, at all. Compared to his calculation, he was naming and talking about lines that he was seeing in the game, and I was like, I didn't even see that coming at all. But so yeah. Oh, sorry. I'm gonna take a drink of my hot tea with my Chess Bugs mug. I have this persistent cough, and I knew that if I didn't have some hot tea, I would be coughing this entire time. So I will probably cough again. So anyway, the idea is you play this knight c3, and that's what we decided. We ended up getting in the game. I played knight c3, and he played bishop b7. And the idea behind this line that is different than the typical London e3 c3 kind of structure is you actually play an early f3, trying to get this e4 push in, and it kind of sort of resembles like uh, a Blackmar Demir gambit. It's kind of a gambit style because literally I'm going to be giving up a pawn for quick development. And I had seen in his games that he will oftentimes play d5, which is the correct move, and I played e4. Now, he took pretty fast. Full disclosure, I wasn't expecting that. In a lot of his online games, he'll play this e3, and then you end up playing here, attacking here. You get this kind of situation, and you end up getting like a really good French defense. But he took pretty fast, and I thought to myself, oh boy, here we go. I remember looking at the lines, but it was it was like you'll see my theory and my understanding just kind of like starts to fade away. I did remember that you're supposed to take back, and here I did not expect this. I remember asking the question when I was looking at these lines, like, well, what happens when they take? And there is a line, and the line is actually queen f3. Now this seems so crazy, and my opponent Evan, he after the game, he gave me like this. He was spouting out this line that he saw, or he had prepped if I played queen f3, and the idea is he said you'd play knight d6. Again, it's protecting this bishop, so now my queen has to do something. But instead of moving the queen, I will play bishop to b5 check. The idea is if you take here, I can take here. It's a very tactical kind of position. c6, I drop back here. He plays g6, and if I don't immediately contest this diagonal and do something like just castles here, black has a very good position. Black's actually doing better in this position. So you have to play bishop e5, and then f6 comes. After that, you drop back to f4, then knight a6, and this is a very tricky position because the computer basically says my only hope for an advantage is to take, and then take here, and then take here, check, king f7, bishop takes, and then the crazy move, rook to c8. Queen drops back, the queen, bishop drops here, again, attacking here. So there's so much stuff going on. He actually he studied this line and remembered this line, and the idea is I have to take here, queen takes, check, here, castles, queen c6, d5, queen c4, king b1, queen takes, pawn takes, king f here. Wow. Okay, that was the line that my opponent, National Master, was expecting. And the evaluation, the computer says kind of sort of even. It's basically two knights versus two bishops. And my evaluation is I have no clue. Also, there is no way that I'm going to see all these moves. Now, when my opponent took, I knew that you're not supposed to take back. Well, I say that, and the computer ironically says you can take back, suggested. I will probably play here next here, but I was trying to think, I want to get this queen move in, but I also want to develop my bishop. But if I do something like this, they're just simply going to take here, and that's an absolute blunder because here falls into this. So I want to get my bishop developed. I want to get my queen out. So I opted for the check. I was expecting something like knight d7, and then I would have probably played knight f3, but then they can take here. Black is doing well in this position. My opponent opted for c6. Now, if you notice, this move blocks this very dangerous diagonal, and now I can drop back to d3 safely. There's no takes, and then dropping my g2 pawn. So here, and we talked about this in the post-game analysis, my opponent basically made the decision. Evan was saying there's no reason to drop back with this knight, because if just look at what would happen. Let's say they drop back here. Moves like this, here, castles. Look at this coordination on the back row compared to my incredibly active pieces. I just have very active pieces. Black is way underdeveloped. So my opponent made the decision to capture, saying, I've got to justify my lack of development and not retreat, so to speak. So I took back, and my opponent played knight d7. Now here, I thought for a little bit. One of the things that my opponent was gracious enough to bring out is I played this game a little bit too fast, which is kind of my tendency. A lot of the moves I played quickly. He actually said it ended up being a little bit more of a psychological thing for him. He didn't know if I was still in theory. I left theory right here. That's kind of where I left theory. Playing the check, I could not, for some reason. In my heart of hearts, I thought queen f3 was the right move. I just could not figure out the complications, especially if the knight drops back and everything like that. So we get to this position, and there was all sorts of wonky ideas. I wanted to get my queen out. I wanted to get here, maybe here. But I had to just stop and say, okay, principled development. I've got to just get my pieces developed, castle, and connect my rooks. The stuff that I tell my students, my beginner students, develop your pieces, castle, connect your rooks. Those are the three things you want to do in the opening. Develop your pieces towards center, castle, get your king safe, and connect your rooks. Move your queen off the back rank. That way your rooks can move freely. I tell my students that all the time, and oftentimes they don't always follow through. However, I also don't follow through sometimes. So my opponent played g6. Now, right here, I kind of had this inkling of an idea. My whole point right now is, okay, objectively speaking, white is probably doing better. I'm down a pawn, but my development is fantastic. And computer recommends moves like queen e2, bishop to g4, g5, and gives white a slight advantage. But I looked at this position, and I looked at how much how underdeveloped my opponent was, and I kind of had a wonky idea. I thought, okay, we're just going to go out in a blaze of glory. If I somehow allow my opponent to develop, castle, and consolidate, there is zero chance that I'm going to win this game. And so I end up playing what is actually a very dubious move. Actually, you might even say, if you take the computer evaluation, a mistake. And if you were to listen to the Lee chess evaluation, you would say it's a blunder. So let's just say this move did not get any double exclams. But my idea was not just to get my knight in the center. My idea was kind of crazy. My idea was to sack on f7. And perhaps my opponent could have done something like this, takes, and make me drop back here, or maybe drop back to bishop f4, somewhere around there. And perhaps this is better. They still have the extra pawn. Their structure's not as solid, but my opponent didn't. I don't think my opponent thought it was crazy enough to actually sack on f7. Maybe in hindsight, it would have been better to do that. my opponent played bishop g7, which is actually the best computer move. And right now it evaluates black almost -1, basically a solid, opening advantage. If I do something like queen c2, queen e2, they can just basically delete everything here, and black is just gonna more than likely win this game. Very solid position. Instead of that, when my opponent played bishop f7, I knew what I was gonna do, and I just took. This move is, you can give this move a double question mark. You can give this move a double exclam. You could give this move, I don't know what you want to do. I would probably give it a dubious move. But there's a concrete idea. I watched a YouTube video by Coach Andres Toth, and recently, where one of his students beat a master, and the whole point was he just brought the fight to his opponent. On equal playing field, national master Evan Rosenberg is going to beat me 10 out of 10 times. But I thought, well, let's just make things complicated. He's forced to take. There's no really other option. I'm forking the queen and the rook, so he has to take. I castle. Well, now we got some serious threats. If black was so kind to just give me an extra move, that's a problem. So my opponent is not a complete beginner, obviously, strong player. And he opts for trying to rebuild some kind of like barricade around his king by playing knight f6. Very good move. Well, my calculation for my knight takes f7 move is now, after bishop c4, officially over. And this is a problem. Maybe it's a problem, maybe it's a good thing. It's a curse and a blessing. I was like, we're gonna get a lot of pressure, we're gonna have fun, and the computer says black is like completely winning. But here, there's really not a lot that he can do. Obviously, can't play. Doesn't really want to play e6. I was hoping for that, but the stuff like this just seems like it's just going to be a nightmare for him. He opts for king e8, which is actually a high recommendation on the computer. And here I think to myself, well, I want to get attacking on this f file. I want to, put pressure here. And I played queen f3, which is actually a really bad move. Excuse me. It's a very short-sighted move. My opponent wisely and very calmly plays queen d7. Well, this is a problem too, because now the threat is c5, and this diagonal is going to be a real annoyance. So I have to make a concession, and I drop my queen back. I want to line up with the king. I want to keep the king in the center. I want to stop any opportunity that my opponent has to solidify their position and just destroy me. And then I would go home as an idiot because I sacked on f7 for no reason. My opponent plays knight d5. And at this point, to be honest with you, I was getting a little bit discouraged in my play. And I thought to myself, okay, he's threatening here. He's threatening here. I can't just drop back here, or this is ugly. So I played here. My idea is if he takes, I take back, and I'm on the rook. I take back, and my opponent plays here. Now, weirdly, in the game, this is how kind of like, at this point, I was like, okay, I'm going to lose the game. I really was dumb by sacking on f7. I was kind of kicking myself for this whole experience. And I was thinking to myself, why didn't he just contest this? Well, you probably see it right away. And we looked at this after the game. Takes, and what's white's best move? Yeah, exactly. Skewer. That's not just the skewer. It's the problem is this here and comes in here. I didn't actually. The reason why I didn't calculate or see this is because of this bishop being protected here. Then you have this stuff. It's just a nightmare. This is definitely good for white, you would say. Resigns times, as they say, plus 9. So my opponent actually plays only move, which is rook g8. And I thought, okay, well, let's just get as much firepower we can into this position. And here, the computer recommends moves like b5. There's king d8, getting off of this diagonal. You know, there's a lot of ways to basically win this position. But for the first time, excuse me, my opponent actually makes a mistake and plays e6. Well, as soon as they played e6, I thought to myself, that doesn't seem right. Because obviously now this pawn can just be taken, okay? That was my immediate thought. I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to take the pawn. But I was like, wait a second. This seems like a trap. Because here, takes here, even here. This is just, black's going to completely win. Black's up a piece. There's no threats or anything like that. So I was like, okay, I don't want to take this pawn. Excuse me. But I want to put pressure on this pawn. So I thought, well, what about rook f6? Now, ironically, rook f6 is not the worst move because if knight takes f6, queen takes f6, and this is a problem. But here, black can play queen or bishop to c8. And honestly, the more that I look at this, it actually might have been a really interesting or unique way for me to play. I didn't decide on that. I instead decided to take this, knowing that they can't take back here. And if they take, if he were to take with the queen, now I can make a kind of a subtle and silent move. And if they go, now there's threats on f7 and e6. They do not have time to play bishop c8 because this is just a nightmare. And the more you look at this, it is just it is ouchtown. Okay, so he cannot take with the queen, so he's forced to take with the pawn. And now I'm kind of sitting up in my chair. I'm starting to think, okay, well, there's something to play for here. I mean, I've got some pressure on e6, so I bring my rook in. Logical idea. He plays bishop c8, which is really the only move that basically holds the position together. And here, I actually have a pretty good move. Well, actually, I played rook fe1. That's rook ef1, which is correct. And he's got to guard me from getting in here. So he plays queen e7. Okay. The idea is he's got to stop me. He's got to stop me from playing in here. I now play queen f4, which is actually a mistake. Here, the computer's saying I should play c4, try to break open the position. The idea is if here, actually you have, I thought it was here. No, it's not because that's bishop b7. Computer's recommending king h1. Not exactly seeing that, to be honest, maybe getting out of that diagonal. But the problem with c4, I don't understand it completely, even though the computer recommends it as a strong move. But I'm not really seeing that continuation. It is a principled move. Once I look at it, kind of like, okay, I got to break up with the position. The king's stuck in the center, all of these things. Black has underdeveloped or just kind of reverse developed his bishop. So there's a lot of things that are playing here. However, I wanted to get more firepower on this f-file. This is actually a mistake. The idea is this wild move, e5. Thankfully, my opponent, he didn't see this. This move still makes zero sense to me because you're taking this, taking this pawn. And as we looked at in the post-game analysis, Evan's like, there's no way we're finding that move because it seems like everything is you're opening up and you want to do everything to like keep the position closed and keep it safe and keep this king safe and don't, trade off the pieces. That way you can win the end game easily. But here the idea is like g5 next, and you have to like drop back here. Bishop comes in here. Queen has to go here, and queen comes to c5, and all of this. You're like, what is happening? How are we seeing these moves? Well, we're not, because it's very difficult to see these kind of moves in a practical game. So I play queen f4, which is actually a mistake according to the computer, but it does make some concrete threats. And my ideas are I'm bringing my rook into the f7 square, dominating the seventh rank. My opponent, cool, calm, collected, plays rook to g7, and I'm thinking to myself, what? How? How can this be? How can this be? Allows me to play check, but knows that he has the escape. So, not knowing or not seeing anything better, excuse me, I decide on just playing rook f8, king to d7. Hold on one second. I'm going to pause the audio for a second. I got a cough. This is going to drive me bonkers. Okay, here we are. If you heard that, the audio wasn't paused, and I'm sorry about that. But man, this cough is like crazy town. Sorry. Okay. It happens when I talk a lot, which is what I'm doing right now. My opponent is able to basically get away. So I look down on my bottom row and I'm like, where are my other pieces? What do I have? Is there anybody else that wants to come into this game? Could not find any. I play a mistake. This is actually a mistake here. And the computer recommends b5. And we were talking about this in the post-game analysis. I don't really know the reason b5 b5. We thought, and we kind of came to the idea that it might have been to stop c4. Because like right here, c4 again is my only option for any kind of advantage. And in this one, you have this kind of move. It's just a weird kind of position here. And then rook here. I guess I can play d5. All this stuff is like, I'm not going to be able to see this. These are kind of moves that I'm not exactly seeing. But I played queen e5, and his only hope at this point for a clear advantage is to play b5. When something like this here, I just run out of firepower. I don't have any more breaks. He's held the position clearly. He's going to be able to like just kind of maneuver and get out. Well, my opponent actually plays bishop in this position, plays bishop to b7, which is actually a mistake. Allows me to take. And the point is, once you go here, now I have this. I'm threatening here and here. Now, there is a move here that kind of like holds it all together. And that is actually bishop to c6. I would have probably played queen here, but the idea is he can just escape this. And even if they go here, Black is going to win this. This is just, and Evan was talking about this. This is the kind of line that he would have liked to see. Unfortunately, though, let's see here. And if he goes here, I take. Oh, the idea is rook f8. And I don't know if I would have seen this, but that was the killer line. And there's only one move, which is this. It's crazy. He has to give up the bishop, comes back here, plays here or here, queen here. And this is technically a dead draw, but there's a lot of ways for Black to kind of misstep. Now, there was a funny thing that happened in our post-game post-mortem. My opponent, National Master Evan Rosenberg, was just like spouting out analysis and lines, and he saw all this because I was like, well, bishop c6, and I was thinking here, and he's like, no, because that doesn't work, because then he showed me how I would just get like destroyed. He would be able to consolidate. He says, no, I was afraid of this, and this is all this stuff is threats are coming, and this is really deadly, because like let's just say they go here, then you have this coming in here. If Black's not careful, he's getting mated or he's losing his queen. Actually, that's really what's going to happen. And to be able to see that you have to throw away your bishop to get this kind of position is very difficult. And so my opponent didn't want to go into that. Instead, my opponent actually, when he played queen b8, he actually played queen to d8. Now, right here, my opponent played queen to d8, and then offered a draw. I looked at the position and I thought, oh, that's why. That's why. Because if I take here, he takes, and I have this. He goes here, I have this. He goes here, and yeah, it's probably a draw. But that's not the line. And technically it is probably a draw here. Um, but black is still doing well. I'd probably bring my rook here to this file, and I would just lose slowly because my opponent would be able to put pressure on these things. I'd have to, there's a lot that would happen. Basically, I would have lost, but I would have lost slowly. So he plays queen d8 and offers the draw. I was looking at this line, takes. I mean, he says, no, the actual line is here. And once they go here, now you go here. Queen takes here. And he said, this is a draw. Ironically, the computer shows that there's actually some play here for white. Now white's in the advantage. Queen here, back here, queen a6. White's up a pawn. No, white's not actually up a pawn, but white has the possibility of winning this pawn. These might become weaknesses. According to the computer, white's now plus 1.5. Not to keep you in suspense. In the position in the game, when my opponent played queen d8 and offered the draw, I took the draw. I thought for a little while. I saw the line, takes, and then here getting the bishop, and I thought, okay, I will take a draw. A draw against a national master, sacking on f7. What a crazy, wild game. A lot happened, a lot of drama. Yes, a draw is what I'll take, so I took the draw. Now, looking at this, if I was playing maybe somebody lower rated, and if I would have seen this line, look what would have happened. Here, queen c7, queen takes, queen here, 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 and here. And if something like this, now I have here, and this is actually a really, really powerful, because if they go here, then you have queen b7. Oh yeah, there's a skewer. Everything's falling apart, so they got to stay on that. They can't take that pawn. But let's just say you get into a situation like this, and black obviously cannot take here against a lower rated opponent. Or if I would have seen this, what a psychological win. Going from a position where I basically make a blunder, but an inaccurate move, and a dubious at the very least, sack on f7, all the way to a point where now I'm here, and the valuation is saying white's actually winning this, according to the computer. Now, a master might be able to draw this, with best play. All that is a possibility. But no, I didn't go into that. Mainly, I didn't actually see the correct continuation. But when he played queen d8, offered the draw, I was a little bit surprised. I was like, a draw against a national master? So took the draw. I was actually pretty excited about about drawing against a national master, and especially kind of the fun game that it was. Now, we then went on to Discord chat, and had an audio a chat with each other, and did an analysis, walked through some lines. I felt like I was getting a master class in calculation and analysis. He was spouting off lines, seeing things that I had no clue. He would mention lines that he's like, I didn't want to do this because I thought you would do this. But I'm thinking to myself, oh boy, if you would have done that, I would have played the blunder, and then you would have won way earlier. But he said, no, you always have to play the best move. You can't take your opponent for granted, all that stuff. So hats off to my opponent. Well thought out game. Very fun game. Probably the most fun game I've played in the DojoLiga so far. It was one I'll remember for a while, for sure. So let me know what you thought of the game in the comments below. Hope you enjoyed it. I know this recap went a little bit longer, but had to share the drama. It was a lot of fun. I wish I could say, with my idea of sacking on F7, I just went like full Morphe mode and like never looked back. But in truthfulness, right about here, right in this general area, I was like, I'm running out of steam. Got a little bit of hope with this, and then once we got right here, I'm thinking to myself, how do I proceed? Thankfully, my opponent allowed me to make some obvious moves after this, and once we got into this position, hey, a draw is a draw. So, yeah, with best play, obviously, my opponent could have wiped me off the board, but hey, we're all human, right? Exactly. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time on Dad Life Chess. And sorry about the cough.